Josh Allen won the MVP. The Chiefs lost the Super Bowl. Matthew Smiley is out. James Cook wants a contract extension, and much more on this episode of Circling the Wagons. Let's go.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Pro Football Hall of Famer and former Buffalo Bill Andre Reed. You're listening to Nate and the Fellas on Circle the Wagons podcast. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Go Bills.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo. Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo. The Bills make me wanna shout.
What is up, Bills Mafia? A lot has happened since we last talked to you. And this is an episode of Circling the Wagons, a Buffalo fan-based podcast. We're going to discuss a lot of different things that have happened. I mentioned the Super Bowl, the MVP, contract holdouts, coaches being fired, coaches being hired, and then some drama in between that. A lot of different fun things to discuss as we head into the offseason of the 2025 Buffalo Bills season. I'm joined as always by my co-host, John. John, man, it's only been 2 weeks since we talked. I didn't think we were going to talk, but there's just like 3 or 4 really juicy items to really sink our teeth into as Bills fans that are fun to discuss. So how have you been, man? I feel like you're probably in better spirits since the AFC Championship game loss.
It's still a little bitter. I don't know.
Dude, there's no shame in being a little bit better. I'm still a little bit better too. But I can say, let's get right into the Super Bowl before we talk about Josh Allen's MVP. The Super Bowl itself was interesting because if you had asked me how I thought it was going to go, I would not have picked that scenario. I think that I thought it would be close. I thought the Chiefs were going to win somehow near the end like they did last time they played the Eagles. But the Eagles just came out and just flat out dominated the Chiefs from the start. I believe it was 34-0 up until close to the end of the third quarter. And it was not a close ball game at all. John, I don't know about you, but I watched that game and kind of thinking about, I guess, how would it be different for how the Bills would have played that game, right? Like, nobody wants to not make the Super Bowl. Nobody wants to not play in the Super Bowl. But I looked at that game and I'm like, I don't know how the Bills would have done, but I also look at it as, what did this team that absolutely trounced the Chiefs, the only team that has been able to do that this whole season, by the way, just trounce them, because even the Bills, they didn't win by more than 9 points. I think it was like 30-21, something like that. It was a close game. For all intents and purposes, but it was definitely not the beatdown that the Eagles put on it. I guess when you watch that game, what do you think about? Do you think about if the Bills should have been there, or do you think about what do the Eagles have that the Bills don't have?
The full disclosure, I didn't really watch the game, but
Same. I didn't really. I was like, yeah.
From everything that I've heard and everything that I've seen watching the Eagles this year, as well as the Chiefs and everybody else, Eagles are really good. And if the Bills had made it to the Super Bowl, they could have easily gotten trounced too.
The only thing that gives me hope in that scenario is that the Bills have a better offensive line, I think, as a whole than the Chiefs do. So they might have given Josh Allen more time. But there are other things that the Chiefs do have that the Bills don't have. Like, the Chiefs have a better defense. I mean, there's a lot to like about the Chiefs. I think it would have been closer. I still think the Bills lose that game potentially. I mean, they played the Eagles close 2 years ago and just barely lost that game. But I'm not sure that they win that game against the Eagles either. The way that the Eagles were playing, at least that night, they're on fire.
what I gather, the Chiefs didn't try that all that much in the run game, where the Bills have a good run game and their offensive line can run block really well. So that could have helped. You never know, right? We talk about the whole 13 seconds thing. It's like, oh, they would have beat the Bengals and gone to the Super Bowl, blah blah blah. But you don't know. Yeah, you have to win the other game first, and you gotta do that. So
Yeah, definitely not the way the Bills have been playing the Bengals lately. It feels like. Did they play? I can't remember. God, it feels like the season's been 10 years ago already. The Bills played the Bengals this season and they won. Correct? I'm not dreaming that. Or was it not this season? I don't even remember. They played the Ravens this season, not the Bengals. No. I'm like losing my mind right here.
played the which division? I'm already in off-season mode. Like
I know I'm looking ahead. Nobody wants to look backward. Anyway, while I look this up, the Bills play the Chiefs. They did not play the Bengals. I don't know where I got that from. God,
yeah, I think
play the 49ers. How's that?
So they played the Ravens because they both won their divisions, but they didn't. Yeah, play the AFC this year.
Yeah, I think the Bills. One of the things to take away, I'm not sure if the Bills beat the Eagles. Maybe they do. Maybe they have the best game of their lives. The Bills don't necessarily play well when they don't have experience in that game. Like they usually do pretty well in the wild card game. They're usually a better team and they have the experience, especially against a team like, for example, the Broncos. The Broncos that haven't been in the playoffs in like 12 years, right? The Bills have the clear advantage there. But
there's also the whole 7th seed factor, right? So the Bills keep getting the 2 seed without the bye. But they keep playing the 7th seed, which has never happened outside of the last few years, right? Like it's always been 6 seeds. So the 7th seed is even worse, and it's just like whatever. And like, has the 7th seed ever won?
I don't know.
Since they started doing that, I don't think so.
Yeah, I want to agree. I don't think it has. Yeah, because everyone was saying that the Bills are going to be the first ones to have that happen to them, right? With the loss over the Broncos. People were calling for that, national media. Oh, this is going to be the Bills. Broncos fans, I'm sure, were saying it too. But you have that, and then I don't think that the Bills have the kind of defense that the Eagles do. You know, if you look back, John, I guess this is just from we were concentrating a lot on the game last week or 2 weeks ago when we last talked, but a lot can be said about the Bills defense, just disappointing the Bills year after year in what they're doing and how they never seem to come up strong. And, you know, in these games that the Bills eventually lose, I mean, how many times you look at Josh? Could Josh Allen have played better against the Chiefs? Sure. He didn't play terrible, though. He played well enough to win that game, I think, or at least give them a chance to. But the defense, again, failed. And it's not necessarily just the Kaiir Elam playing in Christian Benford's role, although that was a big part of it. A lot of it had to do with the fact that the Bills didn't have a really good game plan to stop the Chiefs. And then also, they can get no pass rush. That was the thing that stood out to me the most about the Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl, is the Eagles, I think they pressured him at like a 38% rate, Patrick Mahomes. And any quarterback, it was the same thing. Like, think about when Tom Brady lost those 2 Super Bowls to the Giants. Like, one of the main reasons he lost is because the Giants had a 4-man rush between Osi Umenyiora, between Michael Strahan, between a couple of other guys I can't think of right now. Like, they were really good. That Justin Tuck, they were getting pressure on Tom Brady play in and play out, either up the middle. So it allowed them to do so much on the back end. The Bills don't have that pressure from their front four. They just don't. Like, whether you're talking about Von Miller, Greg Rousseau, I think is probably the best of the group, but Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, I mean, you're not talking about a group that really gets pressure when there's only 4 guys there. And, you know, you can sense, and then the back end can't hold up the way it should because there's no pressure. So the back end has to cover longer, and they're not good enough to cover longer. Maybe if this was a Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Trey White in their prime secondary, maybe we're talking difference. But I guess it just imprinted on me how rough this defense truly is for the Buffalo Bills and how it's really holding them back. Because Josh Allen had probably, I don't want to call them the worst set of weapons that he's had since he's been here, but probably since his rookie year, they've been the least amount of talented weapons, like uber talented. Like, I'm not saying they're not talented, but like upper echelon weapons that he's had since he's been here. And he did the most with them. He did an incredible job playing. He played an MVP level of football with a great offensive line and pretty good weapons, right? So I don't think it's Josh Allen. I think it's clearly on the defense, specifically the pass rush.
The pass rush is something they've been working on ever since the very beginning of the Bills-Chiefs rivalry, and it hasn't worked yet. They've been trying. They've been drafting guys. They've been bringing in guys, but it hasn't worked yet. But they got to keep trying because clearly that has to work. And then the defensive backs, and you already mentioned White, Hyde, and Poyer. That's in transition, and that's just like aging vets and injuries and stuff. That turnover is inevitable. I think they'll get there, but you're right. The pass rush is probably the number one thing, and you could see it just based on the Super Bowl. The Eagles' pass rush is amazing, and even at linebacker, they're like next year. Like you're looking at the 2026 free agents. Bernard is going to be a free agent, and Milano's getting older. He's like, what is he? 30, 31?
31, I think.
30, yeah, 31. And then across like the 2026 free agents across the board are a lot more just Benford is a free agent, Rousseau is a free agent, Cam Lewis, Epinesa, Daquan Jones, and then on the offense, James Cook, who's might be holding out anyway.
We'll get into that, yeah.
A little secure, McGovern, David Edwards, starters on the offensive line. Like 2026 is going to be really rough.
McGovern's already up for a new contract.
2026, he's due to be a free agent.
Jeez. Okay. I mean, in a year, I thought he signed it. Jeez, I guess it was only a 4-year deal, but it's crazy. It feels like it's only been 2 years. So that'll be a 3rd year next year. Oh, so that's after 2026 season, you're saying, not after this next season.
So like, like this season, Cooper and Hollins are free agents. Next year, McGovern and Edwards are free agents.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so after next season.
Okay. All right. So yeah, there's a lot there. Joey, I just put his comment. He said the Bills this is what happens when you have a small front defensive four. And I'd agree with that. It's not that they haven't tried. I mean, when Brandon Beane signed Von Miller, everyone was excited about it. Nobody was like, this is a terrible move by the Bills. Everyone loved it because Von Miller was still playing. He just won a Super Bowl. And his first season with the Bills before he got injured, he had 8 sacks in 11 games. And ever since that injury, which has been a season and a half, almost a little over a season and a half worth of games, he's only had 6 sacks since then. So he is not playing at the level that the Bills need him to. And you could say that's injury, that's age, whatever it is. But there's an out for the Buffalo Bills where they just eat $15 million of dead cap if they cut him. I'm on that train unless they can get him to somehow take a pay cut, which he did last season. He might be willing to do again this season. I'm okay with that. But at this point, it's like, what are you really getting out of Von at this point? I mean, he's not pressuring a lot. He's not getting a lot of tackles. He's not setting the edge really well. There's not a lot to like about Von. And I love, I wouldn't say I love Greg Rousseau. I like him a lot. And he's their best pass rusher right now. But he's not your number one pass rusher. Like, he's not a Max Crosby. He's not one of those guys. Myles Garrett, right? He's not one of those guys. And he probably won't be. But he's a solid number 2 pass rusher. If you had like Von Miller in his prime with Greg Rousseau on the other side, they'd be going gangbusters like they did the first 11 games in Von Miller's first season. They were great because they fed off each other because you had to double one of them and the other one was able to get free.
That Von Miller injury, that was really unfortunate because he was doing really well for us after that trade until that happened. And I agree with Rousseau. Rousseau's great, but I think he's more of a number two. Like if you think back to like Phil Hansen, like with Bruce Smith on the other side, like that was awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping they get like a Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, or even a Micah Parsons or something. But something would be
something.
something
Yeah.
like a plate, like somebody that can do that.
You know what's crazy is the Eagles, a lot of their pass rush and defensive line help they've gotten is from the end of the first round. So there are guys like Jalen Carter, I'm thinking of, right? Like there are guys at the end of the first round that the Bills could absolutely get and make an impact. And, you know, they need like AJ Tharp. He just tweeted and he said rounds 1, 2 of the draft need to address one tech defensive tackle and cornerback, barring free agency and trades. Yeah, I mean, they need one tech. They could have somebody compete with Ed Oliver. I wouldn't be upset with that. They need pass rusher. They need defensive back help, like we mentioned. John, after that game, because do we have defensive line as our first need? Interior and defensive end? I think we did. And then it went defensive backfield.
Yeah, I think that was right. And then like wide receiver was after that. But with the whole Cook thing, we might put running back before receiver, but not like where you're drafting one in the first or second round necessarily. This is supposed to be a good draft for running backs also. And they got Ray Davis last year, and he's looked pretty good. I know Ty Johnson's a free agent, but they got Frank Gore still, you know, who we like. I think,
yeah,
you know, when we did see him.
When I look at wide receiver, I think the Bills need to draft a wide receiver every year, basically, right? Like you need one, at least one. We were upset that they only drafted one last season. I think they could have at least gotten 2. I was upset that they didn't.
But they did bring in, like, I mean, it was their first pick was a receiver, and they brought in both Samuel and Hollins, and then they traded for Cooper. So they did do a lot of things to try to address receiver. They just 100%. I know both Samuel and Coleman were injured at points. Cooper too. I don't know if they were affected after the injury. How much of that was? Maybe that's why they fired their strength and conditioning coach.
If I were to tell you before the beginning of the season that the Bills were going to have Amari Cooper on the roster, Curtis Samuel on the roster, and then Mac Hollins, and that Mac Hollins would like be head and shoulders above all 3 of those guys in statistics, like would you be like, that's insane? Like you're a crazy person, because that's exactly what happened. I mean, he was so much better. He was one of the best receivers on the roster.
I know, it was like an afterthought, it felt like, and he had the most receiving touchdowns. He was a great blocker. He was an amazing role player. It just, I mean, if they're going to resign a guy, it'd be great if they resign him.
Yeah, it was. Joey Hatch has an interesting tweet here. He says the only reason why they trade for Cooper is because Brandon Beane was wrong, and our receivers could not get separation. And I agree with Joey on that one. So when I look at that, Bills, if they do need to get a wide receiver, which they do, but if they do draft one or get one in free agency, they need to get one that can get separation. They need one with speed, and they need one with separation, because they don't have. I think they were bottom 3 or 4 in the NFL with wide receiver separation numbers. Like they had great yak, but it's a matter of like, hey, can these guys get open? Whereas Lamar Jackson is, and we'll get into the MVP in a moment, but like he was throwing to guys that had some of the best separation in the entire NFL. And you're looking at that, it's just like, imagine Josh had an amazing season with like pretty good wide receivers. It feels like that's the equation, or that's the formula that works for Josh Allen. Give him time, and he will find a guy to throw to, right? And I think that that's what they're going to go with, because keep that line intact. Keep drafting depth guys for the offensive line, but keep that line and then just keep drafting wide receivers and hope that you hit on one of them. Because so far, Khalil Shakir, I like him. He's not number one wide receiver. I don't think they expected that when they drafted him. He's a great fifth round wide receiver for them. But they don't have like a Puka Nacua. They don't have, a Tyreek Hill in his prime or Justin Jefferson. Like they don't have that on their roster. And until they keep drafting, they're not going to.
And they drafted Kincaid, and
Dan, what are your thoughts on Kincaid right now? Because I'm not super high on him. I know it's recency bias because he didn't play that well. He had that drop at the end of the AFC Championship game, but
not just that, but he's not blocking as well as like Knox, and so he's not going to be on the field as much. So he's only going to be on the field when it's Knox and Kincaid and 12 personnel. So he's not getting as much opportunity. So he's not getting as many targets, and it's just not happening.
I mean, they ask a lot of their wide receivers and tight ends to be able to block in the run game. And I think that's where they're losing a lot of Kincaid. So that part of me thinks, though, why did you draft him? And, if your intention was to only play him for, I don't know what the snap percentage was, but I'm sure it was like around 40%, maybe. Like that's not tight end one numbers. Those aren't, and then when he is in there, do you see much? He's not really a separator. But again, I'm not a separation guy. He's a good hands guy, except for when it's the AFC Championship game. But he's a great hands guy. That's why they drafted him. But no one ever said like he's just going to find some room and he's just going to be gone. That's I mean,
both,
Jesse,
both Kincaid and Coleman. That was the whole reason they drafted him, right? They were going to catch the ball in contested catches and things like that. But after that, there's nothing to say about them, right?
No, exactly. Jesse has a good point. He says, for some reason, Allen isn't accurate throwing to Kincaid. The advanced stats show he gets open 8th most out of tight ends. Allen is throwing like 1/3 catchable balls to him past 10 yards. And that's not incorrect. There are times that he drops it, but then there are also times where Josh cannot. The chemistry isn't there,
It's true. These guys are still young with the team. You would see Keon on a couple times, or at least once, where he he'd point up in the air on the next play. Oh, throw it like up higher, and I think there was one occasion where he actually did it and they caught a touchdown. But they're still working together. Like it's still new. Receivers?
All the receivers besides Khalil Shakir, the first time on the team, right? He was the only one to have caught a pass from Josh Allen in a previous season for receivers. I mean, tight ends, Kincaid and Knox, but and running backs, obviously. But besides that, even running backs, it was really only just James Cook, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, and Khalil Shakir, right? So,
and they had, I think, maybe
was Ty Johnson? Oh, that's right. Ty Johnson was there a season ago. I like Ty Johnson. So yeah, that's the Bills are lacking. They don't have that was another thing, we were talking about weapons just now. The Eagles have better weapons than the Bills do. They just do. I mean, AJ Brown and Devonta Freeman, you could argue are better than any receiver that the Bills have currently on their roster. Both those two guys, and those are their top two guys. So, the Bills absolutely, they need to upgrade in pass rush. They need to upgrade in weapons. They need to give Josh someone to throw the ball to. They need someone to actually affect the quarterback. And I mean, Josh is the same way. Hey, Brady was the same way. All the good quarterbacks are the same way. They say if you can get to them in 4 guys, they're not the same quarterback. And Patrick Mahomes was not a Hall of Fame MVP quarterback that night. And it's the same with Tom Brady when he played the Giants, like I mentioned. It's the same with Josh Allen. When you get in Josh Allen's face, he is not the same quarterback. He makes bad throws. He makes early throws. He gets happy feet. He does things he shouldn't have. But when he gets some time, he's a very dangerous quarterback. So anyway, I'm not going to belabor the point anyway, but there were definitely some clear differences. I don't walk away from that Eagles-Chiefs game thinking, the Bills were right there. Like it was very clear to me that there were things that the Bills were lacking, specifically defensively, but then also weapons-wise.
Agree 100% on the 4-man pass rush, and I think the Bills have been trying to do that. They just haven't been successful.
Yeah, and not for nothing. Give Bean credit for trying to get Von Miller, and if it wasn't for the injury, like they might have addressed that need. I don't think that's Brandon Beane's fault though. So like when he did that, we all loved it. Nobody, like I said, was poo-pooing that, but the results just aren't there. Greg Rousseau getting into the being at the end of the first round draft pick. AJ Epinesa, like I mean, Ed Oliver was supposed to be. He is a top 10 pick. He has flashes sometimes. Daquan Jones is getting older. Like there's not a lot of faith in this front four to get pressure if it's not from particularly Greg Rousseau or like a weak interior where Ed Oliver can take advantage of it. They've tried. They've taken swings at it. They drafted Boogie Basham. They drafted Greg Rousseau. They drafted Ed Oliver. They got Dwayne Carter this year. They've tried at times, but just no luck. AJ Epinesa. Like AJ Epinesa is like the new Shaq Lawson. Like he's okay. He's decent depth guy, more of a run guy, but yeah, the Bills need to make, like, people have mentioned in the chat, I haven't shown every single comment, draft defensive players with all the picks of the draft, right? Just focus on that. And I can't really disagree with that. I mean, I would like, one wide receiver and one offensive lineman for Josh, but other than that, and maybe a running back, like you said, but other than that, man, just spend them all on defense. Do defensive line, secondary, maybe a linebacker. Get more depth, get better players. Let's do this so that we get into the playoffs. And even when we're healthy, we're just not playing up to par. So on a positive note, John, Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills quarterback, won MVP, which is great to see. John, you and I did not think that would necessarily happen. We bet Mike, our other co-host who is not on tonight, that it would not happen, to which we owe him each a garbage plate. So
when we go out, he's going to eat 2 garbage plates, so we should eat one.
We only have to pay for one. Then we'll say, "Oh, we'll get you next time." We'll just never go out with him again. That's how we do it. No, we just get him like a gift certificate or something. I don't know. We'll figure something out.
No, we should go out and get garbage plates.
Dude, I would love to go out. He has a place in Webster he wants to go to. I haven't checked out, so we'll definitely do that. We'll set up a night for it. So I didn't think that it was going to happen. It was a tight race. I think it was like 26-22 or something like that for first votes for Josh Allen over Lamar Jackson. I think it could have easily been Lamar Jackson. I wouldn't be upset about it because of how good of a season he had and, everything else going around him. But it was kind of like Mike said. I think a lot of the, people, when they were voting, looked at it as just like, they kind of had voter fatigue of Lamar Jackson. Like, yeah, he had a great season. He exited in the first round or second round or whatever in the playoffs. It's not worth talking about. But it was interesting. I was happy to see it, and I was very surprised. But I think it was well earned. I mean, we've talked on the podcast that there were a lot of things that Josh Allen does that just without Josh Allen on the team, the Bills are what, 7-11, 7-7 or 7-10 or something. This is not a great team. We just talked about how bad the defense is, and luckily McDermott is a defensive-minded coach, so he can scheme them up when they're lacking in talent on personnel. Josh Allen makes that team run. That run game is not the same without Josh Allen. He means a lot to his team. So I know you agree with that. I'm just kind of.
Yeah, I Allen. In my mind, flip for dollar is the MVP. I didn't think he was going to win it, but no, I'm happy for him. Well deserved. I got a trivia question.
Ooh, yes.
Can you name the other Bills players who have won the MVP award?
John, come on, man. You think I don't know this? Oh, man. I'm going to leave it up to some of the people in the chat because there's some people going around. So there's only one other Bills player to have ever won an MVP, right? One other, or is it? There's only been one other Bills player, right?
No. There's
the most recent one. Okay.
2 NFL and 2 AFL. So if you want to name all 4.
Oh, 2 A. Jeez. Andrew C says OJ. Is OJ one of them?
Correct. 1973.
Nice. I should have figured OJ.
Season.
I should have figured the 2,000 yard
in
season
14 games, which is still a record if you count yards per game. That's the best 2,000-yard season.
Wow, he was just killing it. There's, I want to say, just this is where I was going to go. John Robert, I think he's right on this one. Right, last one was Thurman Thomas, 1993. Is that correct?
You're half correct. 1981. But yes. Well,
he
Thurman
did.
Thomas. Yeah, you were wrong. He was right.
He was right. John did not give a year. I gave him the year. John says 1993. John Roberts, like, I did not say 1993. I knew it was 91.
But can you name the 2 AFL MVPs?
Oh, geez. I'm trying to think of who was even on the team at that. Was it Cookie Gilchrist?
1962, Cookie Gilchrist.
Right. All right. Was the next person an offensive player or defensive player?
Offense. 1965.
Jack Kemp.
Yes.
Jack Kemp. All right. Wow. That's crazy. It's crazy that I got that. Those are literally 2 of the 3 players that I would have guessed from that era. So that's incredible. I thought, so when I found out that Thurman Thomas was the last one to win it, for some reason in my head, I thought Jim Kelly won one. Did you know he didn't win one before you knew that Thurman Thomas was the last one?
No, but so maybe he won a Pro Bowl MVP? Is that possible? Maybe you're thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not. I know Tasker won one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember.
Maybe. It definitely wasn't a Super Bowl MVP. I know that. So it must have been a Pro Bowl MVP that he won. Something.
Let's not get into that.
Yeah, let's not. Jeez. Buzz Killington over here. I mean, he had a great speech, of course. And if you've seen it, he mentions, a player. He mentions Slick Rick in the mailroom. And I'm sure you've probably seen, the clips on social media, Slick Rick, tearing up, thinking about the fact that Josh Allen called him out specifically in the group. And he's like, I'm just doing my job. He's like, and the fact that Josh notices me doing that, he's like, that speaks to the person Josh is, a leader, this organization, everything like that. And Wester gave him a new car. Like, I mean, you got a great story, man. Like, just good things. It's again, more reasons for us to love the fan base, love everything going on. And again, how you can feel, rooting for this team. It's just a great team, man. It is so easy to like these guys, and there's really not a lot of bad things. There's not like, oh, well, this guy was almost wanted for murder, or something like that, where you're like, well, I guess I'm going to look the other way. This coach had a DWI, and then he rammed into some pedestrians. It's like, oh, well, got to try to justify that. Like, this didn't happen. The Bills are a very likable team, and it was a cool moment to see. It was cool to see Josh Allen get the respect that we think he deserves, and puts Buffalo on the map again. And it's another notch his belt, and hopefully it's the first one of several, and hopefully that he gets to the Super Bowl MVP. He's holding Lombardi next time instead of the MVP. So next topic, besides the great things, the Chiefs losing is a great thing. Josh Allen winning the MVP is a great thing. Here's another great thing, John. Matthew Smiley, the special teams coordinator, was let go. And I hate saying, I hate being happy about that, because I struggle with that, because you don't like to see people lose their jobs, their livelihoods. And I don't take solace in that. And I'm not happy for that reason, except when it comes to people that are underperforming. And John, that if you were consistently underperforming at your job, if I'm consistently underperforming at my job, we're not going to stay there. That's just the way it is. So special teams coordinator, Matthew Smiley, finally fired. He's one of the few coaches that I've asked for to be fired on the podcast. I'm sure, John, you feel a similar way. Were you upset, or were you just like, well, it is what it is?
I think it needed to happen. Well, I mean, you know me, like years past, especially during the drought, I was calling for everybody. But I mean, it's easy as like a Monday morning quarterback to do that. Like, but no, it needed to be done. He's not smiling anymore. There's some of the headlines thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's poor taste. All right. But no, this new guy, not surprisingly, was with Carolina previous to this. But he does have some interim head coach experience also. He's also been special teams with Bears and Browns, going back as far as 2008, and then college before that. He's got a lot of experience. So no, I think they needed to make a move. So let's see how this goes.
Yeah, I hate being the guy that's like, oh, anything new is better, because people are just like, fire Sean McDermott. It's like, yeah, I'm okay with firing him if you can find a better replacement, because you don't know. You could get the next Josh McDaniels, right? Like thinking that he's going to be better than Sean McDermott.
Unless you
He's
can get
absolutely
Andy Reid or
John
like
Harbaugh, maybe, or
seriously.
like who's at this point? I mean, I wouldn't take who's the Steelers head coach? I'm just blanking on right now. Mike Tomlin. I wouldn't take Mike Tomlin at all over Sean McDermott. So
no,
no, I mean,
Tomlin's never had a losing season.
well, that's the thing. It's funny, with the Super Bowl, is Nick Sirianni. People wanted him fired this season, and then he comes back and he leads the team to a Super Bowl win, right? Like, people that call for Sean McDermott to get fired. Hey, I get it, man, but like that's not necessarily like they wanted Nick Sirianni fired. Look what happened.
Yeah, fans are stupid, including us. Like we say stupid things all the time.
We don't know shit. It's just we're just talking out of our backsides. It's just but with Matthew Smiley, it was a little bit different. They were bottom third in special teams EPA, which in my opinion, I know special teams doesn't get nearly the amount of snaps as offense and defense. How important is EPA? I think you just notice when the special teams is really good or really bad. And I think for a lot of the season, they were not really bad, but they weren't good. I'd say they were unsatisfactory. If I was going to give a rating of average to above satisfactory, below satisfactory, or completely dissatisfied, I was below satisfactory. I did not like him. I didn't hate him, but it just wasn't getting better. Sure, Tyler Bass got better as the season went on. I think even Sam Martin was doing better as the season went on. But their coverage units, the areas where you saw them getting coached, like I'm trying to think of which play where the Bills got caught on. It was against the Broncos. They got caught on a fake punt pass, right? Like that, they weren't ready for it. They had no idea that was coming. So I think that all comes out.
Going into the playoffs, I thought the special teams would have cost them the most, but it turned out it was going to be the defense. But
I thought for sure it was going to be special teams, right? Either missing a field goal or a botched punt, or a punt block or something.
If you go all the way back to 13 seconds, or like they couldn't really relay the information to Tyler Bass that he was going to do this thing, or maybe they didn't. They didn't tell anybody that. Like the whole conspiracy there.
Was that Matthew Smiley that was the special teams coordinator then?
I think so.
I think it was.
So. I can't remember the last time they switched.
It's been a while. I remember when Matthew Smiley came in, people were like really excited because they're like, "Oh, look at this guy! He wears cleats on the field. Like he's a." Oh no, I'm thinking of the offensive line coach at the time, the assistant offensive line coach that came from Indy. But they were psyched about Matthew Smiley, and that was the year that the Rams went to the Super Bowl, I think, and won it. So his third is the Bills team's special teams coordinator. He was with the Bills 2017 through 2023. So yeah, he was there.
Who was the special teams coordinator during the drought that we wanted him to take over head coaching duties at one point?
Oh, I loved him. We were just talking about him.
Who was that?
Oh man. The name escapes me.
It's on the tip of my tongue, and I just can't say it.
Oh man, what the? If you guys know it, please save us in the comments, in the chats, because I cannot remember for the life of me. I can see his face. Is this what getting old is like? You just constantly can't remember people's names. It's like, oh, that guy.
You walk into a room like, why am I here? Why did I walk into this room?
My dad will try to tell, mind you, he's in his 70s now, but my dad will try to tell me a story. He'll be like, oh, so the other day I was, going over here and I was talking to, what's his name? Eric. And I know Eric from, and I'm just like, none of this is important. Continue, please. This is, but the guy that I'm trying to think of, I remember when the Bills were going through coaches, because he's one of the few assistant coaches that spanned over several head coaches, right? And when the Bills would constantly fire coaches, I'm like, make him the head coach. Like, make this guy the head coach, because
he went to Cleveland after, I think.
Yes, he went to Cleveland.
I'm trying to look it up.
I'm trying to just look for
Bobby April.
Bobby April, thank you. Oh my goodness.
2006, 2009.
Jeez, I apologize for everyone that's listening to this and watching this live. That is not how I thought the last 5 minutes would go. Bobby April, thank you for saving us, John. I'm like Googling like the last special teams Bills history and nothing's coming up. You're just like, did you know Matthew Smiley got fired? Like, yes, I do. So again, I hate when people get fired, but at the same time, the Bills. See, sometimes
he didn't go to Cleveland after. He went to Philly after.
Went to Philly, probably won a Super Bowl right after.
2010, 2012 with Philly, and then Oakland, then the Jets, Tennessee, LSU. Okay. Anyway.
Is he still in the NFL? Did it say that or no?
No. He's been out since 2016, 17.
Oh, okay. So it's been a minute. Got it.
Yeah, he's like 7. He's in his 70s now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So good news there. Bad news for the Buffalo Bills on that front is I was going to go into James Cook, John. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that? Whether it's the MVP or Matthew Smiley or anything like that.
I'm good without. Yeah, no, I'm good.
So a lot of drama with James Cook and the Buffalo Bills. Who knows if it's made up? Who knows if it's real? But I'm sharing my screen right now. You can see people mentioning James Cook unfollowed the Bills, removed all his posts. He also changed his profile picture, which was originally with him in his uniform, in a Bills uniform. Got rid of that. He has a pinned comment, his own comment on an Instagram live video that he did that said 15 mil a year. He did say he retweeted something to the effect of, I want to be paid. Somebody said, want to be paid 15 million a year. And he said 100, stuff like that. It was interesting. There's some drama there. For the life of me, I did not think that James Cook would even be, and I don't know if this is just him playing chicken, if he's actually going to have a contract holdout, but I mean, he had a good season, 1,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 1,000 yards rushing, receiving is probably another 300 on top of that, 18 total touchdowns. He's a good player. John, you've been his biggest fan since he was drafted, and you hate drafting running backs on day 1 and day 2. Like, that's like your biggest pet peeve, but you've been a fan of him since the beginning. You called it. He's played great. He's gotten better as each year's gone by. I know you hate paying running backs. So when you hear this, what's your first instinct? Like, pay him or no way in hell?
My first instinct is no. I'm not surprised because I think Dalvin Cook has been like vocal about James getting paid over the last couple of years. So I'm not surprised.
As you should as a big brother, right? You want the best for your little brother.
Right. But during the drought, I was like, I was really angry about the Bills using all these high draft picks on running backs when they needed a quarterback. So obviously this is a different situation because they already have a quarterback. But you could make the argument, like, look at Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, and they're older. Barkley's 28, Henry's 31, Cook is only 25, and these other guys took their teams like so far and this and that, and you could make that argument, but that's a tough sell for me still to pay running back that much a year especially when they have all these other needs. Like the defense is gutted. It aged out last year and now it's gutted. The offense is okay. They might need another receiver, and then but
yeah, if it comes down to paying for a Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby or a better receiver for Josh Allen or pay James Cook $15 million a year, I mean, it's not even close. Like, I mean, I'm not even going to entertain that possibility. And then you say, well, that not $15 million a year. Like, what do you feel comfortable paying with? Because I'll tell you right now, average salary per year, Christian McCaffrey is at $19 million. I think people would say, sure, he deserves to be top 5, right? Jonathan Taylor, the next highest paid running back, is at $14 million per year. Saquon Barkley, $12.5 million per year. Alvin Kamara, $12.2 million per year. Josh Jacobs, $12 million a year. I mean, you go to the top 10, now you're talking like Chuba Hubbard at $8.3 million a year. Where do you feel comfortable in paying him? Because I got to be honest, like, I wouldn't even pay $8 million for a run per year for a running back unless he was, top 5. And I don't know if James Cook is top 5. I love James Cook. I love what he's done. I think he's part of one of the best running back rooms, this team has had since we've been fans of the team. But I think that James Cook's production has a lot to do with him getting better. He's a better running back than he has been, his first couple of seasons. But I think a lot of that has to do with the offensive line. I think the offensive line is the best he's ever played behind. So he's going to put up career numbers. There's still some downsides to his game. He's not really good at pass blocking yet. He's just not an all-around back. Like, you don't look at James Cook and like, this guy can carry the ball for 80% of the snaps. I want to say he only plays 40 to 45% of the snaps as it is. They don't run this team like they have a feature back. So I would not pay him 15. I would not pay him 10. I would not pay him 8. I think the most I would pay him is probably like a 4-year deal of $5 million a year, maybe. And that's about where I'd land with it. I know that he wouldn't take that, and I don't blame him.
I wouldn't go that low, but he still wouldn't take what I would give him.
What would you give him?
8.5.
8.5. So you go top 10 with him.
But I also wouldn't necessarily do it now. I'd wait until after this year. And
oh yeah,
if he's gonna hold out, if they think he's gonna hold out, they just trade him as soon as possible.
Yeah. The Bills pay their guys. That's the other thing that's weird about it. If the Bills have been really good at paying people before their contract is up, if they really value them. Like, think about Spencer Brown. His contract wasn't going to be up until the end of this offseason. And they paid him at the very beginning of the season. Same with Ed Oliver. Same with other guys.
The other thing we got to look at, too, is, so Cook is a 2026 free agent. And I already mentioned before all the other free agents they have in 2026. Shakir, McGovern, David Edwards, Bernard, Benford, Rousseau, Cam Lewis, Epinesa, Daquan Jones. But all those guys, there's a lot of guys. A lot of starters. A lot of role players. In 2026, their contracts are same year as Cook. They got to make some decisions. I don't think running back is going to be the one. If push comes to shove, he's not going to be a Bill.
No, and it's unfortunate. You like James Cook. He plays really well. I think if it came down to me re-upping the starting center, who's been doing well, or James Cook. I mean, there's no contest. I mean, you got to keep that offensive line together and hope that you hit some pieces in free agency in the draft for running back, wide receiver, and other pieces.
In the defense. And the defense is
The
already
defense,
in shambles, right? And then you look at next year, Bernard, Benford, Rousseau, and Cam Lewis. Also, Reed Ferguson is a free agent this year. They're going to resign him, right? The long snapper, right? They should probably
I would
resign him.
imagine. Yeah, I would imagine he'll come back. So, yeah, it's funny you said, like, someone had mentioned, Joey Hatch says he'd give him 4 years, $40 million, half guaranteed with incentives. But with that amount of money, I need 2,000 all-purpose yards every season. Exactly. And it's not that James Cook couldn't do that. They just don't ask him to. And this isn't the same as, like, remember Le'Veon Bell when he held out with the Steelers? I mean, he was their entire offense, running the ball, catching balls out of the backfield. I mean, this is a guy who was the back. The Steelers leaned on one guy almost that entire time. And I don't know if it's the same way. I haven't really followed their running back room since then. But
It's a split right now, but
okay. So they did, and then it made sense for him to hold out. I don't think that was a smart idea, but at least with a guy like that, it made sense to hold out because you are that entire offense for the most part. But James Cook is not this in total offense, not this entire offense.
and I think that's by design. The Bills like to rotate lots of positions, actually, and it's worked for them, and it keeps guys fresher too, and the depth guys get more experience.
Yeah, agreed. So, I mean, if you're worried about it, hey, draft someone on day 3, just to have in the background. If you don't think you love Frank Gore Jr., and Ray Davis might end up being your starting running back, like, draft another guy for depth just to be safe. I mean, the Bills have 9 picks this year.
It's supposed to be good running back class this year. Not that I want to like spend an early pick on a running back, because you know how I feel about that. But just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, something to keep in mind, for sure. So we hit on the James Cook drama. We hit on the Super Bowl, the MVP, Matthew Smiley leaving. What am I missing, John? There was a couple of other things that happened.
I don't know. I don't think I had anything else.
Oh, they re-signed Alec Anderson or something like that. He's going to be on the team a little bit longer. The Bills, not for nothing. We mentioned the offensive line being good. They've been healthy the last couple of seasons. Luckily, they've been healthy. And they actually, for the first time, kind of have decent depth. With Alec Anderson playing the 6 offensive linemen a lot of the season, he's getting valuable playing experience, just more reps. You're talking about, guys in Tylen Grable, guys that could potentially be their starting swing tackle or right tackle or left tackle as time goes on. They have Cedric Van Granger is their, backup center, the guy out of Georgia. Like, they have decent depth and they've drafted guys. So I'm still high on the offensive line. The Bills just need to make some swings at a receiver or so, maybe a running back, but then, hey, hit that defense, like you said, that defense. I think we should finalize our big board of needs. But I want to say, if I looked at ours from last season, I think defensive line is near the top that season too. I think we've always been kind of pounding on the table for that, and it just doesn't seem to happen.
We might have been slightly more wide receiver last year, but I think defensive edge pass rusher is probably number 1 now.
Yeah, exactly. So cool, John. It was good talking to you, man. It was good talking Buffalo Bills with all of you guys. If you have any comments, feel free to shoot them over our way, either via DM or if you're not following us on social media, please do. We're at CTW Pod, like X Circling the Wagons Pod. So let us know your thoughts on the team we're going to hopefully use that and our perspective throughout the season. Thank you guys all for getting in the comments for this one in the chat and giving us your thoughts on it. Yeah, this has been, I didn't think we were going to talk this early. I know we're going to talk again sometime before free agency starts. I'm not sure exactly when. We're not doing the absolute, weekly show like we've been doing during the regular season, but kind of taking it easy. There's only so many things that we can talk about at a time, and there's just a lot of drama going on, good things, and then some off-ball things. And it was a good weekend. If you're a Bills sports fan, the weekend of Josh Allen getting the MVP, the Eagles getting just destroyed in the Super Bowl, and Matthew Smiley being fired. I mean, if you were a fan of all these three of those things, it was a good weekend as a Bills fan. And for me, I thought it was going to be an awful weekend. I thought the Chiefs were going to three-peat, and they didn't. So I was happy, man. I was happy. So appreciate you guys all being a part of this. Appreciate you guys all listening, watching, live stream, everything. If you're not doing that, please do follow us. We can get you guys in like Joey, AJ, Jesse, John, all these other folks earlier. Andrew, appreciate you guys all being a part of the show. John, any final thoughts before we end this one and bid ourselves adieu before we have to owe Mike a garbage plate for being wrong about the Lamar Jackson MVP and Josh Allen thing?
Only 67 days until the draft.
Sounds good, man. So for me, Nate, or for John, I guess this is your chance to sign off and say, go Bills.
Go Bills.
For me, Nate, go Bills. Only 67 days to the draft, but hey, man, we're going to start getting into the free agents more. Who's available? Who's on our wish list? Who would we also take? Because we know that the Bills don't necessarily go after the Von Millers every season. They don't have the money for it. We're going to go over contracts and stuff like that. Who you would see from free agency, who you don't mind seeing let go. Joey mentioned earlier that, Reed Ferguson is the most longest tenured Buffalo Bill. So I guess I'm sure they'll probably keep him. But, there's some other players to talk about. Mac Hollins, like you mentioned, Amari Cooper, stuff like that. So I think it's going to be some fun discussion. So thank you guys for all for listening, for viewing, for being a part of the show, for staying optimistic with us, because it was rough there for a couple of weeks. And I think we're finally starting to dig ourselves out of it. So, I was listening to Joe B's podcast, and he mentioned that the Bills have different expectations this next season because this last season they didn't have any. Nobody was expecting them to win the AFC East even, much less go to the AFC Championship game and go 13-4. So have the second seed again, win the division for the fifth year in a row. It's just the expectations are going to be there this season. And I'm hoping that the Bills can live up to it. And I think they're playing like a better team. They just need a few pieces and a few changes, and I think they can be there. So thank you guys all for listening. For me, Nate, go Bills, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Circling the Wagons podcast. Download and subscribe to us in your favorite podcast service. Email us at ctwpod@gmail.com. That's Charlie Tango Whiskey Pod @gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter @CTWPod. And most importantly, go Bills!
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills, Nate.
Well, listen, the whole show is called Circling the Wagons. Say no more. I love it.